So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Insights into Learning and Improving Tests and Rubrics in Ultra Courses with EAC Visual Data. I'm so happy to have Dr. Ruth Newberry, the Director of Institutional Effectiveness and Portfolio Manager for Global Professional Services and Anthology Inc., as well as Dr. Rebecca Graham, Director of Institutional Assessment and Outcomes at the Office of Planning and Institutional Effectiveness here at UDC. And with that, Rebecca and Ruth, there you go.
Thank you, David. Always a pleasure to partner with C.A.L on all good things on assessment. And that's kind of what this is. We're at doing some hopefully really helpful assessment work with you all today. And it's always a pleasure to do anything with Ruth Newberry from Blackboard, I guess, Anthology, right? Technically, Ruth?
Mm-hmm. Same, always.
Thank you. So I will start us out and kind of like lay the groundwork for what we'll be talking about today. And then Ruth can do a nice deep dive into EAC for us. But let me sort of like start us off and talk a little bit about like, what we're doing today, why we're here. Well, we are here, of course, to focus on teaching and learning at UDC. And we want to talk about gaining insights into student learning using rubrics and tests within Blackboard specifically. And we'll be introducing you to EAC software as a course reporting tool. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so we're introducing these new assessment tools in Blackboard this year. And it's new to UDC, I should say. I am partnering with the Center for the Advancement of Learning, or C.A.L, and we are partnering with Dr. Newberry from Anthology in this initiative. So as I share a little bit about these tools with you today, there are a couple of questions that I would like to ask first. So if you all would like to, you can, unmute yourself or share in the chat, whatever you'd like to do. Or just like note to yourself silently. My questions for you, are you currently or have you been using test questions in Blackboard? If you want to share in the chat. And then my other question is, have you embedded rubrics in Blackboard to assess student papers, presentations, projects, etc.? So I'll give folks like just a minute to respond in the chat if you'd like. So again, are you currently or have you been using test questions in Blackboard? Or have you embedded rubrics in Blackboard to assess student papers, presentations, projects, etc.? Thank you, Dr. Songwed. Yes and yes. My response to you then is this webinar is definitely for you, and hoping that we can help you engage in these tools both today and in the future. So thank you. Okay, so if you answered yes, as Dr. Songwood did, to either or both of these questions, then Blackboard has already done or will be doing some analysis for you with these new tools. And if you haven't done these things yet, but would like to, then C.A.L is here to help you set up your assessments in Blackboard, and I'll be working with them in partnership. And we really want you to think of these new tools as an opportunity to tell your story. These tools will help you visualize your course level data so that you can quickly and easily understand how well your students are progressing in their learning. And you can see that little screenshot there at the bottom left. You enter into Blackboard the way you always do, and you can therefore enter into engaging in EAC the way you always do with Blackboard, just signing into the Blackboard SSO. And you'll have like the access to EAC within like the tools area. And we'll show you that as well. So what are these new tools? They're called Blackboard Goals and EAC. EAC stands for Educational Assessments Corporation, and it's an assessment reporting tool embedded in Blackboard. So you can think of these new tools. First one, you can think of these new tools as opportunities to better understand student learning, course, program, college, and institutional levels. It all starts with Blackboard goals, particularly if you're doing program level assessments. So you would, in Blackboard goals, you would align your courses to program goals and program objectives. Think of this right here as a readiness list to take full advantage of these assessment tools at the program level. To do so, you'll need to start here, okay? With selected courses and assignments and aligned program goals and objectives, and any curriculum mapping would help you as well. As an instructor, you can already take advantage of these tools in your individual course and courses. So let's take a closer look, though, at that readiness list for programmatic assessment. So if you would like to engage with these new tools at the program level, you'll want to select your courses ahead of time, along with specific course assignments. And by assignments, for this particular, this particular juncture, I would say, we specifically mean test questions and assignments that are being assessed, graded, evaluated by rubrics. Okay. You'll also want to make sure that the courses and thus the assignments are aligned to program goals and objectives. Again, that's for programmatic evaluation or assessment. And then again, for programmatic evaluation and assessment for curriculum maps, we'll just be looking for the introduced, reinforced, mastered levels. Again, all of this will be aligned in Blackboard. After the alignment between goals, objectives, and courses, you'll then add your test questions and rubric-based assignments to Blackboard. Again, as an individual faculty member, you're already engaged with these tools in your individual courses. So you add you link your courses and your assessment activities if you haven't already done so. And at this stage, you can work with C.A.L. They will not only help you add your assignments and assessment tools to Blackboard, C.A.L. can also provide feedback on your assignment and assessment design as well. After the students complete their tests in Blackboard, and after you have graded assignments using rubrics that are embedded in Blackboard, EAC is ready to generate reports. So this is a snapshot of a data visualization in the EAC reporting tool. Okay. These are rubric levels, okay? Right here where that little notation is there. Parentheses. These are rubric levels. As you can see, if you take a look there at the see if I can see the screen here. At the capstone level, that's the top there, okay? As you can see, about 13 of the students met the capstone or highest level in the rubric for this criterion, with slightly less than a third of the students at the lower levels of rubric. It's the two last rubric levels there, milestone and benchmark. Okay, so for those last two levels there, these areas right here tell me that I'll probably need to increase support for students in the next semester when it comes to this aspect of the assignment. This aspect of the assignment is explanation of issues. So I'm getting a heads up here. A third of the students need a little bit of help in this area. This is where I can scaffold and focus on continuous improvement in the next semester that I teach this course. Okay. If you've aligned your courses to program goals and objectives, again, programmatic assessment, Blackboard can then place your specific class results, course results in the context of all the course sections and other aligned courses that demonstrate student learning across the courses in a program. EAC even provides feedback on the quality and reliability of your test questions and your rubric rows. And again, as an instructor, you currently have access to the EAC reporting tool in Blackboard. And we'd love for you to dig in. I'll be working with C.A.L to set up workshops and trainings for these new tools. I'm partnering, with Dr. Newberry too, of course. So if you're interested in learning more, be sure to send us an email. You can send me an email. You can send folks in C.A.L an email. We'll be sure to keep you posted on those additional trainings to help you dig in. But you can do it now. You can think of it as like a sandbox, if you will. Right. So to get to EAC, you just log into Blackboard as you typically do, and just go to the tool section, and you'll see EAC visual data. And from there, I'm going to have Ruth take it from there because she's going to be doing the actual demo. So Ruth, by all means, just tell me when to advance slides, and I'll
okay. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, David and Rebecca and everybody at UDC for this wonderful collaboration. As Rebecca said, we've been working on helping UDC expand its assessment opportunities over the last 8 months. And it's been I have to say, it's been a wonderful experience for me to work with such a great team at UDC. So as Rebecca kind of suggested, there's different parts of what EAC can do for you. So if you want, go ahead and next slide. Let me just back up a little bit, give you a little background on the tool itself. So EAC, as Rebecca mentioned, stands for Educational Assessment Corporation. They are an embedded Blackboard tool in your Ultra environment, and Rebecca showed you there the icon in the tools area that you can click on to open the tool itself. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you see. But EAC has really been around since 2009. They started as a company working with the health professions who were using Blackboard, and really as an outgrowth of a lot of accountability things that were happening in the health professions previously. As these programs started thinking about how they were preparing and testing their students, they needed a very, very robust test analysis system. So EAC started with that, leveraging Blackboard tests, being able to really dig into the test question level, item analysis. And then over the years to today, to the present, we are now working with more than almost 100 clients around the world on institutional level reporting as Rebecca mentioned, that programmatic level, on how students are performing on program learning outcomes, institutional learning outcomes, accreditor learning outcomes if you're in a discipline that has an external accreditor, and working more at the institutional level, not just at a specific program, but at that higher level, thus the partnership with Rebecca, C.A.L, and others at UDC. Next slide. So what EAC does is really two kind of functions. What we're going to focus on today is its first level, which everyone, all faculty instructors have access to at UDC, and that is the rubric analysis and exam analysis. When you are using the rubric function and the exam tools in your Blackboard Ultra course sites. And it provides real-time analytics and analysis to help you better understand, as Rebecca was referencing on that last slide, where students might be struggling, where they're doing well, rubric rows that might need some improvement in clarity, or questions that seem to be problematic for students. And then it also has a goals area. And that is something that we'll be working on a little later. We're not going to talk too much about it today. As Rebecca mentioned, there's some pilots going on. If what you see today is, sparks some more interest, contact Rebecca or C.A.L, and they'll get you to the next step. So let's go ahead. Next slide. So within your Ultra course sites, the first step is building either a rubric for grading. Typically, you're have either a key assignment or a project or something where you want to really evaluate your students with a rubric. And that starts with entering that criterion, those levels of achievement, the descriptors, setting whether or not you're going to use a percentage range, point range, but setting this up really to grade your students on the requirements of the assignment. So if you are doing that now and have been doing that, you probably have some data, and we're going to show you how to get to it, to be able to look at, to start analyzing the effectiveness of this rubric. If you haven't done this, that is, you may still be using paper rubrics, using them to grade, but not really having them within Blackboard, then this is where C.A.L and the team can help you do that, bring that paper rubric in, start using it to score, being able then to leverage some of the data that we will get. So let's take a preview of that next. Next slide. So some of the things that this tool EAC can do for you immediately with scored rubrics is begin to give you insight into each row, each criterion of your rubric, and break out according to the levels of achievement where you have scored your students. This can help you begin to understand or identify students at risk, areas in which, or skills that those criterion are focused on, that your students may be struggling with, as well as show you which rows and areas of the rubric students are doing very well. So I always say, when you start using this tool and looking at your rubric and the data, you want to kind of ask, were there any surprises? Was there a particular row that may had more students at the lower end on the achievement level or than the higher? Are there any rows that, like, wow, now that I'm looking at this for the whole class, I didn't expect them to score as they did, either in a positive way or again, pointing out some areas that need improvement. Are there also rows in which the scoring may be all over the place, and so that row may need some refinement? But really what we're looking at the row analysis and the rubric is its overall reliability, and we give you some statistical data to look at that. And is it really meeting your objectives and helping you identify how students are performing? I will tell you, this is not black and white. This is all gray. It is statistical analysis. It is meant for guidance to help you begin to understand where students are and what you may need to either do course correction immediately. For instance, if you had a project scored by a rubric at midterm, you now can get some insight as things that maybe you need to do with the current course or for future courses. So rubric row analysis, let's go to the next one, is something that is very powerful in EAC. Not only do you get that understanding of the rows and how students have been scored overall, but you can also begin to dig down to each individual student in your course. and look at how that student is performing in comparison to the class as a whole. And that's kind of what you see here, row by row, with the different colors in orange and red, showing you the breakout of the course, the group of students. But our student, Lenny Small, he's the blue bar. And this is where I can see he's doing really well on that first criterion, but he's struggling a bit in comparison to his peers on the other rows. So Lenny potentially could be one of my students that I would want to kind of watch, see if he's reaching out, seeing what he's, how he's performing, and maybe getting some additional help. The other thing is what we are showing you is one way of simply downloading all this data into even a Word document or an Excel file that you can also include in your teaching portfolio. So I know many of my clients, at the end of the year, faculty need to write the annual report, what they focused on, what they wanted to look at, and EAC gives you very easy downloadable reports to attach as evidence and examples of the things that you have been doing. Let me just pause for a moment. For those of you that are using rubrics in your courses now, or maybe will be in the future, do you have any immediate questions over rubrics and some of the data that EAC can provide? And you can either come on mic or in the chat. So my next question, as you think about this, do you see this as being helpful to you? Having this kind of analysis on the rubrics that you use in your courses? Okay, seeing a response or two. Great, good, excellent, good. All right, now rubrics is one area of EAC that you can get immediate insight. So again, if you're using a rubric today and we're grading it, as soon as you start to score it, at the end, you could go to EAC and pull this report. So it gives you that immediate information on where students may be doing well and struggling. Next slide. The next, though, is tests. If you are using exams, the Ultra exams, building those questions within your Ultra course, for midterms, finals, quizzes, comprehension type exams, different things. But if you are leveraging the exam tool within your Ultra courses, then EAC is going to be able to give you a deep analysis of that test and student performance as well. And especially useful for those high stake exams like midterms and finals. But it all starts with your building the test as you did the rubric to grade and evaluate your students. You know, building those questions, and we will pull data from any of the question types in Ultra. But setting up your questions, setting up your pools, even being able to randomize as you deliver the test, you can randomize the questions, you can randomize the distractors, you can give additional time to students. All of that in the deployment of the test is not really a concern of EAC. Because what we are looking at is the responses. What happens after you deploy? How did the students answer? Did they get the right answer or not? And that's where, next slide. we begin to provide really robust item analysis. Now, within Learn Now, you can get a sense of difficulty of question. You can get a general sense of some problematic questions, but really the kind of deep dive that allows you to pinpoint specific questions and possible reasons why, or areas to look at. That is it the question stem, or is it what we call the answers or distractors? Do they need improvement? So one of the things we do, and again, whether you randomize, use pools, any of this deployment method of your exams, we're going to give you a very deep item analysis, being able to pull out every question that you presented to the students, being able to look at those questions, just like we do rubric rows, in terms of how easy was that question overall to this group of students, how difficult. That helps you, that's a kind of p-value scale, we call it, but that helps you see how well your test was distributed and differentiated in terms of difficult to easy questions. Often I find sometimes that faculty are surprised, perhaps on not having as many difficult questions as they may have thought, or having too many easy questions. And this is where, looking at it from ease and difficulty, we can begin to ask, in the course I'm teaching, am I really developing questions at the level I should be? Are too many of them at a recall recognition level, like the lower level thinking skills of Bloom's? Or am the way I am writing those questions really getting at higher level application, evaluation, those, again, that next tier of Bloom's critical thinking scale? And by pulling it out, we can begin to better look at that level of framing the question itself. Same applies for the distractors. We're able to pull out and categorize how many students selected each one of the question responses. Just like with rubric rows and levels of achievement, we can now look at each of those answer options you gave and how many students selected which ones. That often can lead to, well, why did so many not choose the right answer? And having those question answers, you know, really right in front of you, you might be able to begin to see, oh, wait a minute, you know, the question stem might not be as clear as it could be, or there's not enough differentiation in the answer responses, or maybe we have a lot of guessing going on. Again, helps you identify problematic questions much more easily and effectively through the EAC tool than what you will find in your basic ultra courses. And you can see down below some of the statistical measures we use in the test, as well as several of them also in the rubric row analysis. And that's a little bit for future sessions. Okay, next slide. One of the things I find most helpful from faculty, what they tell me at the instructor level, is often they would like to pull up a student, or again, see their students individually ranked from best to least, or and question by question, and be able to look at, did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? Where are my high scoring students? Which questions really maybe gave them some difficulty as opposed to the lower scoring students? What were the common questions that they had difficulty with? So we're able to pull all of that data out of your Learn test and put that into various EAC reports. We also can call up the specific student. So again, you may have a student that didn't perform as well as you thought, and you kind of want to just skim their test and see which questions they answered incorrectly. So you can do that. So again, you can see them in comparison to everybody that took this test, as well as individually. Next slide. Key things, though, to remember with EAC as opposed to what is happening in your Blackboard course itself, and that is EAC is not your grade book. It is not a replica of what is happening in the grade center. In the grade center of your Ultra course, you are assigning points or percentages to assignments and to rubrics. You're weighting one row over another row in the rubric, or with test questions. Some questions may be worth two points. Another question may be worth 10 or 15 points. All of that is for the purpose of giving the student a grade based upon how you see the questions being weighted and scored in terms of levels of achievement on a rubric. What EAC is doing is providing you insights into your tests and rubrics from a pure assessment view. And to do that, and to be able to allow you to take a rubric in one section, compare it and use it or combine it with another section that you may have offered or used in one term and used again in another term, we have to do what is called normalizing. And all that really means is that, next slide. For rubrics, a row has certain levels of achievement, but each row, to be compared statistically to other rows and rubrics to rubrics, every row is worth 1 point. And you can see in this little table, if I were creating a grading rubric, I might have an A, B, C, D range. I might be using points, or I might be using percentages. And I'm going to give the student maybe an 85, a B range on a row. Well, when we look at it as a normalized row, we look at how many rows are there, 1 point, and then just break it out according to a standard deviation kind of scale. So a 5 row might be 1, 0.75, 0.5, 0.25, and a 0. All that is when you divide 5 levels into the top range, 5, it's 1. When you divide a fourth row, that B range, by 5, it's 0.75. So it's really just looking at however many levels of achievement you have and knowing that each row is worth 1 point, and then you get the breakout. So for some, it might be a 1, a 0.67, a 0.33, and a 0 for a 4-level rubric. That's it. So because what we are looking at is not the grade that the student gets, but how many students fell in each level of achievement in a rubric? How many students were in that B range? How many students were in the C range, the D range, on each of the row criterion? That's how we begin to identify, are students doing well on this row or not so well on another row? And as Rebecca mentioned too, when you begin to think about programmatic assessment, you're thinking of, well, row criterion 1, which one of my program outcomes might align to that? And so as we think about all the various places that goal could be aligned, we need to have this 0 to 1 normalized scale for rubrics, but we also have it for tests. So let's next slide. In test questions, we're looking at the same thing. How many students got it right? Each question is worth 1 point. How many students got it wrong? That's a 0. Then you may offer partial credit in some questions, so students begin to fall within that range as well. So again, we're looking at, on this question, just like on this row, how many are getting it right versus wrong, and those in the middle, where do they fall? And that way, again, if you later begin to align programmatic outcomes to specific questions, that question and that rubric row that they may have been aligned to begin to carry a similar weight. And overall, when we begin to look at the effectiveness at a program level, we're using these sources of evidence, and we need to equalize them or normalize them. Next slide. So before I kind of jump into a quick demo, let me just ask, any questions so far? The one point I would leave you with is, don't be surprised. The data, the numbers you will see in EAC are not going to reflect the points and percentages in your grade scale. Any questions? You're a quiet bunch today. You can end the presentation and I'll start to share my screen. Let me take over. So tell me when you can see my screen.
You can see your screen.
See it? Perfect.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So as the slide indicated, right now, if you were to log into your Blackboard course system, in the tools area, you're going to see the EAC icon. If you click on this icon, it's going to open up to a search screen. Now, once you're here is where, if you have tests and rubrics scored, you're going to have some data. EAC can only report on scored rubrics and tests. It's not going to give you a preview of, hey, I have a rubric in my course, but it's not scored yet. It's only on what has been scored. Now, I'm going to jump out of your system into my system because I have more data to show you than what I have in our sandbox course. So again, it's just really going to your tools. Let me close out of that. Open up EAC. And then for most of you, you're going to not see anything up here. I have a dual role within my test system, but you would open up, and again, you're going to see tests, rubrics, goals. And for now, goals is what is on the UDC server, which let me just go back quickly. This is all that is on the server, your Blackboard system at present. As more pilots come in, as you reach out to Rebecca and C.A.L, then more things will be added here. But right now, it's very limited. We're in the very early stages. On my system, you can see I've built out a mock-up of potentially a university, and we may have a College of Arts with a bunch of different programs, and they've added their different program goals, etc. This is the future at UDC somewhat. For now, though, tests and rubrics are where you as an instructor can begin to get data. So let me start with rubrics. When you open up, this is the search screen. And the important thing to do here is, and let me make this bigger, is to set what we call a date range. So if I wanted to go back and look at previously scored rubrics beyond maybe the last week, we default to the last week, I'm going to open up my calendar. And in my case, I'm going to go back several years and put in a date. You also can just type this date in, whatever is easiest. And then again, you can set an end date. I'm just going to leave it to today. Click go. And there's rubrics. These are the rubrics that I have in the courses that I teach. They're English. My doctorate was in English. American literature was my focus. But as an instructor, I've had some courses that have been offered in the past, as well as recently. So I'm going to see my course name. I might see my course ID. I'm going to see the date in which I started to score those rubrics. I'm going to see the name of the assignment that the rubric was attached to. And then I'm going to see these linkable rubrics. So being in composition, the first, our comp course, notice I've been participating in some gen ed assessment, a common rubric that we've put into our courses used to score the students. So notice how they aggregate. That means, or combine, that means they're the same rubric, just used multiple times. If I come up here and look at this one, it could be the same rubric as this, but because I have named it differently, it's not going to aggregate. Perhaps there also are a different number of rows and things like that. So all of your rubrics will be in a list. I can click here, kind of alphabetize them, different order if I want. I could reorder any one of these columns by just clicking on the column name. But once I've selected, and I'm going to select the combined one, it tells me two have been selected. I'm going to click that little arrow, and it's going to open up this rubric report. What I see immediately is I'm calling in two rubrics, 2 different times. I had 10 students enrolled. For some reason, I'm only have evaluated 2 already, 6 of this one. And then I have this pass percentage area. That relates to what we call a target. A target is, think of it as that baseline between what is unacceptable work and what is acceptable and beyond. I might, in my courses, say, I'm really looking at that target being a C level, not a D, which it defaults to because that is passing, but more at a C level. I could also, for some courses, maybe in the higher level, I may even want to make this a higher level of pass. This does not affect anything we do in EAC, has no impact on the rubric as scored in the gradebook. We are bringing the data out now to look at and analyze, but we are not making any changes. So I'm going to set my level at 70. And when I do that, you can see my 2 students, no one is meeting that in the overall value of the rubric. But in my other class, 3 of my 6 scored students did pass or meet that target. And this is where, too, down below, I get a kind of reliability index and a bit more information. Now, I can scroll up and down, or I can just click on one of my menu items here and begin to just see one area in a frame. That's often easier to do. So what I'm seeing is I have 8 students that were scored on this rubric between these dates. That rubric itself has 5 rows. Multiply those possible scored items, actual, they're the same. All that means is you did not skip a row for any student in the scoring. Sometimes we need to. Sometimes students may have not performed or even addressed something, and we're not going to penalize them for that. We're going to give them a no. But that's all that is telling you. High score, 4.5. Notice 5 rows is the best score one could get. I do not have a student that has a perfect rubric or the highest level in all the rows. And this is where you see the normalization. The number of rows, 1 point each. That is then the top level possible for this rubric. Low score, I have a student that had 2 points out of the 5. Your mean, median, standard deviation are all built around this 5-point scale. Statistically, in comparing how I scored those 8 students, I've been fairly consistent in that scoring of my higher performing students being scored more in the higher range. Lower performing students are scoring in the lower range. I have a very high reliable rubric. Anything a 0.5 and above is considered a reliable rubric. I could throw that off, though, if in my rows, I could have one of my criterion be like timeliness, formatting, and suddenly everybody is doing well on it. Well, that's statistic going to say, wait, you have lower scoring students suddenly scoring high. So that will bring down the consistency and bring down that KR20 score. So you just have to be aware that sometimes there will be rows in your rubric that are really not evaluating skills so much, or they may be doing requirements in the assignment, like formatting, timeliness, different things like that, but not really a skill that you would expect to differentiate students. Now, this is just a table view of each one of the rows. I'm looking at all the students together and what their overall performance is when you take all their scores and average them. This is a very quick way to see I have a row my students are underperforming on. I have other rows, maybe they're doing not quite so well as I would like, especially if my target is 70. I only have one row here that they're meeting that target at the row level. And I can see that even better when I go down to perhaps this chart, where that second row, it is the lowest performing against my levels of achievement. And I can see there's more distribution, and I have some students that are really underperforming in the red, the benchmark. I also can just start taking out some of these achievements, and here I can hone in and see, yes, I have 2 rows where really I have some students that are underperforming. So you can really kind of explore that rubric and performance at the high level. This is all the students together. But I can jump down here as that one image was showing you and begin to see in that lowest row, I have more students underperforming than performing at the acceptable level and above. So now I may even want to look at who those students are. This is row 2. I can go look at my individual students, and I can begin to, let me move this. There we go. Move this over to row 2, and sure enough, here's my very low scoring students. And then these are the higher performing, but I have more students at the lower level. And if I want to look at one of those students, let's say Bill, here's where he's, how he's performing against the group. Now, goal summary, student goals, these here do not really have any meaning until we're beginning to align rubric rows to goals. Your student landscape, though, can be very helpful because it will pull out any comments that you are giving to students. So if you need to document that you're giving feedback to students, this report will do it. Also, if I wanted to share this report with anyone, but strip out all the student data, this is where that the standard report will open up and just give you the high level view of your students, how they did on that rubric. No student names, no identifiers. This is often what is attached to an end of the year performance report or comment or shareable with your colleagues. No students are listed in this report. I also, though, if I only wanted the row analysis, I can always at any one of these modules come in and pull down, have the option to pull any of that down. If I'm really into getting all the data and really looking at some of the other tools and building my own charts, I can click on the Excel, use the analyze data in it, and build my own charts and graphs. Now, what you do for rubrics, exactly the same for tests. I know we're almost out of time, but very quickly, set my dates, find my test, and similar things. How many students, how many were graded, and then the quality of my test, and you can see it's below a 0.5. This is not a good test. I would really need to look at it. How can I do that? Perhaps, well, I can see first I'm using some pools. Not every student may be getting the same questions. I also have very few students in this, 3 questions, not enough statistically to really build any key changes, but at the same time, I may want to look at these and figure out what's going on. I can see this is a very difficult question. In fact, this question, no one got it right. So maybe I come over here now. That was a multiple answer question. Maybe the students didn't understand it was multiple answer. So even though I say select all answers that apply, I have students that are giving me just one response. Maybe I need to make that clearer in the question. And then the types, again, true, false. This question, everyone did well, but look here, I have a very large response rate and people are choosing different things. So maybe here again, I need to look at both the question stem or I need to look at my answers. Are they clear enough? And this is one of the things that the test analysis can do. You can see these right now are green. They could be red. Anything in red is a problematic question. I can dive into the individual. Here are those 3 questions. I can see my high scoring students. No one got this right. So that's a question I'd really need to look at. Is it the question? Is it we didn't give enough attention in the course? Is it at the wrong level for the course and for the students? It's not always the question that is the problem. And again, these students got it right. These got those questions incorrect. And once again, without aligning outcomes to any of the questions, we won't see any data here. Student coaching, this is a file. You notice we're collecting all the questions that students got incorrect. This file we have used at the request of some of our health sciences to be able to pull out each of the students, look at, they got the question wrong, but what was their answer? So often this has helped provide some insights for remediation and tutoring. But again, this is all available for you. The Word documents will strip out the student data. Full document will give you that data. It is in UDC for you to explore. You know, go to that area, go to tools, look for that icon, explore, see what you find, generate those questions. If you do have questions when you open EAC, some very basic, you can click on the icon here. This will take you to our support site, give you a little brief overview, but mostly we have in this user guide basic questions, FAQs, answers that will help you. I would guide you to the quick start especially, but I know to often follow up with Rebecca or others will help overall. But it's there, try it, tell your colleagues about it. I think you'll be surprised at what you're going to find. So I'd like to thank you very, very much for attention. Let me stop sharing. And I believe, yes, issues help at the C.A.L help desk, but also I believe Rebecca can help, will be available as well for help.
Yeah, excellent. And thank you so much, Ruth and Rebecca. Ruth, knowing, you know, with this webinar, you know, what are some three key takeaways you hope participants have gained from this webinar? So
first would be to remember that the data and the numbers you see in EAC are not the numbers that you see in the gradebook, the normalization. That the purpose is to help you find problematic rows, problematic questions, and then finally really understand the reliability and what you can learn from where students do well and where they're struggling. Mm-hmm. And use those to begin to think about, what can I do now? Or what do I do in my next course?
Excellent. Yeah, and you know, Ruth, we're always so pleased to work with you. So I do want to just highlight our next webinar here on the screen. This is using EAC rubric analysis to develop effective rubrics, and that's with Dr. Helene Krauthammer, Professor of English at the CAS, College of Arts and Sciences. That's on Thursday, November 9th from 12 to 1 p.m. So I did put that QR code on the screen. I also put it in the chat box. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email Dr. Rebecca Graham at rebecca.graham@udc.edu or Cal. That's Cal Help Desk at udc.edu. I've also put our YouTube channel, and we do have a survey. If you click on that, please tell us how we did today and what you would like to see in the future. And again, our next webinar with EAC is on November 9th, and you'll see that in the chat box. Any questions before we go from the participants today? Again, thank you so much, Ruth and Rebecca, for your time. And this was a very valuable webinar. I've also learned a lot, and I cannot wait for the next one.
Great. Well, thank you both. And thank you all for attending. Have a great fall weekend.
Yes, a long fall weekend as well. Right?
That's right, a long fall, right?
Perfect. Yeah, my favorite. So thank you everyone again for joining, and we hope to see you for our next webinar. Bye-bye.